So I'll stop sharing for now, do the intro, and then we'll go into the presentation.
All right, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear Michael? Yes, okay, awesome. So, thank you so much for joining. And we have with us today Michael, who is the head of design at ShapesXR. Now, he's really good at product designing, and he's been in the AR/VR industry since 2016. And so, today's lecture is going to be on ShapesXR and how to use it for prototyping and all those things. Now, Michael's a very busy person. He has taken some of his time off to give us this lecture. So we're going to respect his time and we'll take up all the questions at the end of the lecture. So thank you so much, Michael, for joining today. And the stage is yours.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael. I work on a tool called ShapesXR. I've been working in the industry as a designer for about 8 years now, and I've been at Shapes for about 3. For any of you who are unfamiliar with what ShapesXR is, it's kind of a AR, VR, 3D design tool. The idea of the tool, beauty of it is that it kind of explains itself. It's a tool that you use to come up, to explain your 3D ideas, to design virtual reality interfaces, to create prototypes. What I'm going to do in this lecture today is primarily I'm going to cast from my headset and just show you what it looks like to create in Shapes, talk about different flows that I've used, show some different prototypes, talk about how we use Shapes at Shapes, because we design Shapes in Shapes, and just go through, I think, some of the relevant features for you guys in your hackathon. So without further ado, I'm going to put on my headset and go to make sure it's casting, and I'm going to share my screen. All right. So right now I am in a blank space. When you first load into a new space, you have your menu. This is what you will use to create, to edit. Think of this as like your toolbar. What I have here is I've loaded into the shape tool. So if I press the trigger, I can start creating a rectangle. So for example, I might create a panel, and then I can grab the panel with the grip with the middle finger. So now it's in my hand. I can move it around, right? And what's nice about designing in the medium is that you're actually feeling it out already, right? Like I can make this panel bigger, smaller. Like when you're designing XR experiences, a feeling is really important, right? Like you're not just designing an app, you're designing a place where your users are going to go. So the way your application feels, the size of UI elements, the distance away, even the lighting, right? Is it darker? Is it lighter? Are we facing the sun? And we'll keep going through all that, right? But first off, really simple. You can draw, create a plate. So grab it. Then we have this functionality on the trigger, which allows me to create rapid duplicates. So now I'm creating a bit of a, letting my plate hang out. I can change the kind of shapes I make. I can draw in circles. I can throw things away just by grabbing them and tossing them. So these are just the basics of shapes. I can change the color of what I'm creating. I really like this inverted sphere. I think it's like a really nice thing to use for kind of like almost like a 3D, 2D effect, because you can take 3D objects. And what I'll do is I'll go to my asset library, where we have a bunch of pre-built assets, as well as my own files, and these are GLBs that I've uploaded. So for example, I've uploaded a model of a space shuttle. So I can grab that, pull it in, I put it inside of my little inverted sphere. And what an inverted sphere is, if anyone's unfamiliar, it's this shape that's kind of like if you're inside of it, what's known as the normals are inverted. So when you're inside of the sphere, you see the walls, but when you're outside of it, you don't. So it's really nice for creating these sort of like, you can see that it's like clearly a 3D object, but it kind of has the same like viewability of a 2D object because you can view it from any angle. This is my selection tool. So I've switched into it now that I've used an object. And I can move my joystick left and right. And this will allow me to grab objects from a distance. When I grab it, I can push it forward, backwards, left and right, scales it up and down on the thumbstick here, if you can see that. then you can make it bigger and select a bunch of objects. So when I've selected a bunch of objects, they move together as one. And then I have my snapping button. So this makes everything align into 45-degree increments. It's really useful for setting up like, really precise things. So I'll take this, and I like to usually work in this like kind of small sphere and switch between sort of, the big one, small one, big one, small one if I want something from a distance. Then I select this object, and I can press this button here, and that will bring up my gizmo. So now you can see I'm able to manipulate these objects in a nice way. So I'm gonna maybe like create a little row here, bring it into this way, and I can hold down this trigger, and I can pull out a duplicate, or I can stamp. So there's multiple ways to create duplicates. So now I created a few UI elements, and when I've selected them all together, I can group them. So now, what I've done is I've created a group. So we'll say this is gonna be my little, we're gonna group this together. There's undo, redo buttons here. So I'm gonna group this together, and I'm gonna actually throw these out. So I'm gonna grab them, combine them, toss them away. So now we got this little thing here. By the way, this is a really important concept in Shapes. This is what's known as a viewpoint. And the way the viewpoint works is when I press the play button, which is on my joystick here, I snap to this position, right? So this is gonna be where my user sees my prototype from. So I hit play, and I see it there. What the viewpoint also allows me to do, it allows me to pin, it allows me to attach elements to my hand. So in the example today, I wanna make part of my UI actually be attached to the hand. So I'm gonna grab this guy here. It's a nice size. I'm gonna make it a little smaller. Let's see, scale, I can change it. So what I have here is when I select an object, it brings up my inspector for that object, and I can adjust so I can make it half the scale it normally was, for example. So there we go. And through the inspector, I can also choose to attach it to my left hand. So go back to that, I accidentally select the viewpoint, and I'll attach it to the left hand like that. So now, when I press play, you can see I now have a menu attached to my left hand, which is great. So what I'm gonna do now, let's see, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger actually. So yeah, there we go, move it over a little bit. What I'm doing right now is I'm just pressing play, testing where the position is, immediately getting a sense of like how the sizing of this feels. Right, so this is the beauty of Shapes, is that you're ideating and prototyping on your own body while you're in VR, right? You're not like sitting, making something in Blender, putting it in Unity, pushing it out, right? You're like really quickly going through concepts, because like a lot of your ideas aren't gonna be good, right? Like every idea starts out bad. And the key, I think, to any good design is iteration. The key is to iterate. And that's what you want to do in Shapes, as you kind of figure out your idea. So we'll take this guy, and maybe we'll like use it as like a little 3D icon here. I think maybe I'll get rid of a couple of these. So I'm gonna take these out, and maybe I'll extend. I think what I'll do is I'll use one of these, take a copy, and we'll use you as like a little back plate. So we'll do that. Nope, don't want that guy. Yeah. All right, there we go. It's annoying. See, the nice thing about making your own tool is you get to be annoyed by the things you make. All right, so we'll take this guy. We're gonna change its color, which I can do via the material tab here. So we'll go with this. I don't think we need all of these guys. I think this one can go down here. This one can just get rid of that one. And then what I'll do is I will bring this to here, call it one object, like that, put down a little bit. There we go, make it a little smaller. And then I'm gonna group them all together. So first I'm gonna get rid of the property here, and then I'm gonna, can you guys still hear me and see me? I think we're still good.
Yes, Michael, we can hear you. And yeah,
Knock
all
my
good.
computer.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for being in VR.
There we go. All right. Okay. There we go. Still got, can actually tell that I have an object inside. There we go. Let's get rid of this guy. So what I'm doing to get into the group is I'm just clicking the trigger. So if I click on different objects in the group, I'll be able to, like, I can basically traverse the group. Right, so I can select an object individually, or I can select the whole thing. So,
Hey, Michael, your voice is a bit low, so maybe
how's
you
this?
can come slightly. Yeah, this is much better. Yeah,
There we go.
thank you.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I'll try to not, yeah, I'll try to stay here. Let's see. So I'm going to take this group of objects here, and we're going to group them together, attach them to my left hand, and bam. So now I have a little UI. So that's fun. Let's now use the scene system. So right now I'm on scene 1, and what I can do is I can duplicate my scene. You can also do this through the little scene menu here, which is nice. So 1, 2, and what I want to do is on 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to take this and make it smaller. I'm going to take you, make it smaller. Nope. Be a little precise sometimes. So now, perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a hover interaction. So I select my group, I go to interactions, I add interaction, I go on hover, go to scene 2, hover enter, bam. And then let's say I want to do on hover exit, we'll go back to scene 1. So now, got this little interaction. And I can change my prototyping settings, where I can turn this hover effect off. So now I've created a UI that floats on my hand. And maybe at first I want it to be even smaller. So what I'll do is I will duplicate my scene. I'll go back to 1, and I'll move it down actually. So like when I'm here, I'll make it smaller, like that. Cool. And what I'm going to do now is on scene 1, I want there to be a delay. And what I'll do is I will go to my interactions, and we'll add a after delay. We'll go to scene 2, and we'll do it after 0.2 seconds or 0.5 seconds. So let's get rid of this interaction. I'll hover enter to scene 3, and we're going to change this link to scene 2. And so when I go to scene 1, it'll automatically pop up. And this is like a nice way you can actually create little stop motion animations. So for example, I can be on scene 1, let me duplicate this guy again, and on scene 2, still navigate to 3, make this even, make it even, let's make it like, let's move it to like the side. Yeah, so then we'll go 1, then we'll make it so it navigates to scene 2, scene 3, boom, boom. So right now, so what I'll do is when I press play, little animation, and now I have this hoverable UI element for whatever it is that I want to do with it. So this is really the basics of how you can create prototypes and shapes, right? Scenes, triggers, attachment to body, attachment to hand, right? This is kind of the process. I'm going to go through a few more features of shapes I think that are important for everyone to know, right? Like these are like how you put the blocks together, but I want to make sure everyone, all the different building blocks. So in my assets, I have these things called procedural primitives, which I've been using. And these have properties like bend, so I can bend them in different directions. I can change their corners, take the chamfer on and off. Just important to know, these are really, really useful for making shapes. And then I can even change the thickness, make it really thin. Here I have on this hand, on my dominant hand, I have this button here, and this brings up my tool switcher, which is really useful for switching between my tools really quickly. So for example, we have a draw tool. This is really nice, where I can maybe sketch out certain UI elements. I can make a little, it's my tube brush. I can even do a little bit of 3D modeling. So I can kind of create these meshes. And this is another really useful for rapid prototyping. And remember, any tool I can always just grab with the grip button. So I can grab like that. And then I can easily switch back to my select tool, put it all together, group it, duplicate it. Right? See how quickly I've come up with a concept? Another thing that I can do is we have this button here, turns mixed reality on and off. Hey everyone. This is nice because I can move stuff around. I can place stuff in my room. Put it in the window. Maybe I'll put this outside. Maybe I can see my bus stop over there. I can put it above my bus stop. There we go. It's nice over there. Oof, I think Windows mess with the Quest tracking sometimes. But yeah, mixed reality is great because I think augmented reality is just super duper fun, and you can turn that on and off with this button. So yeah, Shapes, rapid prototyping, rapid ideation. It's also a collaborative tool. We won't be demonstrating that today because I'm by myself, but if you click on this button, you have a link and a code, and your teammates can actually join you and you can collaborate in real time. If your teammates aren't with you, you also have the option to leave them a comment. So this is actually a really cool feature. We call this a hollow note. And what I'll do is I have my camera, we'll move it around, and we'll say I want my user to be here. And I'm gonna be here. And then I'm gonna press start recording. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm recording my voice, I'm pointing at stuff, I'm moving around, I'm saying, this maybe should be a little bigger. It could be the primary element in my UI, this might be the secondary, this might be the third, and then I stop. Now that I have this note, when my teammate comes in and I press play, they see me. We call this a holographic note. It's kind of like Princess Leia from Star Wars. Obi-Wan, you're my only, leaving a note for someone. Nice. Yeah, and you can tell who left the note, what the note's about, and they'll all be here. Teleport into the note, press play. Everything's available through the menu. Here is my edit options. Cool. Let's see, these are my prototyping. So we've gone through scenes, right? These are the scenes. We have my viewpoint, which I can teleport into. Also when I press play. So that's our scenes, viewpoints in this menu, assets, prototyping, our various share options. You can also export to Unity. This is really important or really useful if you're working with Unity. You just give the same code that you use to share, and you can import it using our plugin. Or you can export out geometry. So you can give it to your developer, so your developer has a reference of the exact scale that you want your UI to be at. And you might not use it to make your final UI elements, but it's really useful for having as a reference point, right? So if you're gray boxing a level or you're prototyping some sort of complex UI, scale and distance are really important factors in VR, right? So relative to where my viewpoint is, which I can, here, this guy. Yeah. There we go. Exit out. Let's see. We have a sun. So you can change the lighting of the space. You can make it nighttime. You can make it daytime. Lighting is important because maybe you want stuff to catch shadow. But I mean, when I'm gray boxing or prototyping, this isn't really what I focus on for the most part. Different settings. So yeah, that was an overview of kind of what shapes can be used for. I can show you now I'm going to show you some examples of what it looks like when you put it all together. So for example, this is a space with a rocket in it. The idea was like, what does a rocket explosion look like? So we'll load it in. This is the lobby. Boom, 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 boom. Cool. So this is a space. So what we've done here is we have a giant orb. So this is an inverted sphere, like the one I was talking about earlier, and we're using it as an environment. And then we have a button over here, some interaction. So after 1 second delay, we'll go to 2, start to count down, right? These are all just delay triggers. And then I can actually use my hands for this one. So if I put my controllers down, it should switch to hand tracking. And I can see I think I have 7 controllers. Gotta make sure that in the prototyping mode, you actually turn on hands. So that's very important. So I'll put it over here, put my controllers down, move it actually up a little bit so I don't break my computer. All right, yep, so I hit the launch button, and then you can see there's like a delay timer that's switching it off. Bam. Pick my controller back up, and let's go back. So I hit and it takes off, right? Let's keep going. Let's see, I want to find something a bit more complex. So after this, I want to talk about how Figma prototype works. Figma prototypes work in shapes. This was a good one. Let's see. This is a good example of the interactivity system. Load in. How are we doing on time? We're about 20 minutes in. Okay, cool. So this is a space that uses 50 scenes. It'll take a second to load in. If you're getting any performance issues, you can always turn on performance mode. So in this case, this is actually a 3D scan of a real lake tunnel in Seattle. And then as you go through it, this is on a hover trigger. Really simple. You hit play. And that was a little animation done in Shapes. So in this case, the designer actually used a hollow note as part of his prototype. We're gonna X out of that. And then we have these on delay triggers basically playing through this little game. So if I shoot this guy, I get points. This is all done in Shapes, no code, right? You can kind of see the scene system here as it's switching through scenes. So it's almost like stop motion animations. Like a bomb. And then if this guy actually gets to me, it'll switch me to a scene where I've been killed. Or, bah. See? Go back, takes me to the beginning. I'm really good at this game. I played it a lot. Cool. One thing I want to show off, I think is interesting, is specifically how Figma works. I'm gonna try to find an interesting example, but actually, you know what? I'm gonna switch out and I'm gonna show you how to import your Figma prototypes. There's a few different ways. Let me see. There was like there's one where it was our menu. This one. So we actually designed Shapes in Shapes, but we also use Figma for a lot of the 2D elements. Then we use Shapes to do the actual prototyping. And so what I'm gonna have to show you is actually we've used our Figma integration to import and sync the Figma frames. The way it works is I'll import the frame from Figma. We have a plugin where I'll select my frames, and then I'll bring them into Shapes. And the cool thing is, when I update them in Figma, they'll actually update in Shapes. Getting a little bit of performance because I'm moving through too many objects. There are too many scenes. There we go. So what I have here, this right here is actually a Figma frame. So you can see I have this sync with Figma button. And what it'll do when I press sync is it'll actually update it. Then when I press play, I have a bunch of interactive triggers all over this prototype, which are not currently working, but space. But each of these scenes is its own individual Figma prototype. So we tried out a lot of different like UI layouts. This is a really old version of the UI. You can tell we reduced the amount of tabs significantly. So I'm going to go show you how to do that on the desktop. So I'm going to take my headset off real quick. And we'll stop sharing. Go over here. And let me find something appropriate. Share my screen. So I'll just share my entire screen. That'll be the easiest thing to do. So I'll go to, say, Figma, where I have my individual assets. So for example, this is a state of our menu. And what I'll do is I will click on plugins, ShapesXR, logs in, should find this file because I've imported before. Give it a second. There we go. So now it knows that this group here, for example, so I haven't exported it. I can choose what folder I want to export to. So let's just export it into my files. I press export. So now it's going to start doing that process. And I can also, again, I can select a bunch of stuff, right? So if I select a bunch of objects, it'll select all three of them. And then if nothing's selected, it'll show me all the different things that I've selected. This here is my sync button. So if I sync it, it'll update. So I'll show you how that works. So then I go back into Shapes. I'll go to my files, and there it is. There is my Figma frame. So cool thing here, actually, if you used fixed scale, you have this thing called a scale factor. So it'll actually come in at a very specific size. So for our UI, we usually use 0.5. So any element that I bring in, any other Figma element, so I think there was one other one in my files, it'll come in at the exact same proportion, which is excellent. So when you're importing UI from Figma, you're going to want to use this UI scale modifier here. And you get to it by just clicking on it. So you can change kind of like the factor, and what it's doing is it's basically multiplying the pixels by a factor to turn it into an actual physical size. And then you'll always have the same pixel to centimeter ratio for everything you import. So I'll bring this in, so I've made it a lot bigger, but I'll cheap it at 0.5. And you see it comes in with the correct size. Bam. Yeah, see? My text sizes are preserved, right? And then I can also snap this to the surface here. Bam. Toss these away. So that's one way to import Figma. The other thing we've added recently, and this is more of like an alpha, I would consider it more of an alpha feature, is you can import entire prototypes. So for example, the way that works, so we'll go over here. Just realize you guys are seeing my fantasy team. If I go to shapes.app, I'll go to Figma here, and I might have like a prototype of I have this like Horizon OS. I was messing around with Meta's UI kit. So I click on Share Prototype, copy the link, and then as you guys can see, this is like a whole interactive prototype with scrolling, clicking, hover effects, right? Like I don't want to have to necessarily recreate all of that. I'll go to my files, I click on Import, go to Figma Prototype, I paste it in. Once it's pasted in, it comes in as a link. And then if I go back to Oculus, I have it right here, and I can bring it in. There we go. So it's a bit hacky, right? You're not going to get all of the transparency. Although if you're making something for AR, you can set the material to additive. This is like, anything that's black will basically become transparent. So that's good for if you're doing something for like Magic Leap, or you're conceptualizing something from Orion. We'll turn on mixed reality. yeah, normally it'll just be if you just use a PBR material, you'll have it like this, so you can click on stuff. But as you can see, this hover effect works. A video plays. I can pause it. The material got a little messed up here. We'll investigate that later. But yeah, that is basically Shapes in a nutshell. Right? You have your prototyping features, you have your editing tools, you got your draw tool, text tool, paint stuff. I think I will now open up to questions.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. So there are a bunch of questions, and if you want to make it easier, I'll just highlight it on the screen, and then you can answer them for us.
Sure. Where on the screen?
All right, it'll pop up. Just give me 1 second. um, where? Okay, so I think initially when you were showing the spear, there's a
Oh.
question if you can invert it.
No. We have
Okay.
we have an inverted cube primitive as well. So we have inverted cubes and inverted spheres, but you can't do it to any object yet. Your question. Eventually,
Okay.
that is in the cards.
Then, yeah, here's the one.
Yes, yes, you can. So there is a trigger or there's an action in the prototyping system that allows you to switch the user's viewpoint. So if you create multiple viewpoints, you can teleport between them using the interaction system. So it can be on click or it can be after delay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like we're working on some features to like make that easier, kind of like the auto layout stuff in Figma. But for now, I would just probably use like snapping, so that way you're getting consistent elements. But also like you don't have like I wouldn't treat your shapes prototype as the final visual. I would just treat if you treat it more like a pro, you know, keep it a slightly lower fidelity. I know that's not the best answer, but that's the best I can
Yeah.
offer now.
All right. So here's the next one.
Everyone has their own version of the prototype. There's like a scene sync feature where you can turn it on so like everyone's on the same scene. If you turn that on, everyone will be like experiencing the same instance. If that's not on, you'll all be experiencing your own instance of the prototype.
Okay.
You should be created one-to-one, and then precision is kind of up to you. And again, Shapes' strength, it's not, or precision isn't the biggest strength of Shapes. It's more about getting just like the rough, about the right size.
Okay. And there was one place when you're showing how you can place the objects ahead of your window. So they wanted to know which button you were using to do that, to push
Forward,
the
I was
object
like,
forward.
I was just pushing it out. So I was holding it,
Okay.
hold, and then push.
Um, and yeah, so
You can't add a hollow note yet without a headset, unfortunately.
yeah, I thought so. And yeah, so there's a question which asks if there's I don't think we have time to show a quick tutorial, but maybe you can just explain what the
We don't have a
workflow
quick
would be.
tutorial, but I mean, I think we have one somewhere on our website, just shapes.com/unity. There's a plugin. You download the plugin, you enter the code, and then it brings in all of your assets. There should be resources on our YouTube channel. I can probably find it, or in our docs. Shapes.
Yeah.
And I think if you post it in like the Shapes like Discord, someone can help you
Yeah,
there.
we'll post it there. Yeah. So on the Discord, we'll just put up the links for all the resources so you can check it out there.
Awesome. Yeah, we can simulate the gaze and pinch gesture. So if you're using Quest 3, it's the dot is in the middle of your face. If you have a Quest Pro, we actually use the eye tracking, and then you can pinch. And that's if you activate with hands. That'll just work.
Yeah. So is there ShapesXR for Vision Pro, like an app that you can download and use?
Not yet.
Okay. All right.
Um, Not if you import individual frames, and then if you import like a prototype viewer, you're just getting like the prototype viewer. So it'll just work the way it works in your. It's like basically it's like a web browser window with a Figma prototype running.
Okay. One will take a couple of more. So, do you see the question? I think it's, let's see. Okay, now you go.
Is there a way to play it on the web editor? Not yet. Not yet. It's a good
Okay.
note.
Yeah, I think. Okay, so last couple more, and then we'll be
You
closing
can't
this
edit it
soon.
directly in Shapes. You can edit in Figma and then it'll sync to Shapes.
Okay. Mm,
Um, I'm not sure if I really get this question. We do have a grid snapping option.
yeah.
So you can snap stuff to a grid. I'm not sure what the inside of it part is, but you can design it. You can design anything.
Do you have any like top five spaces that you made in ShapesXR that they can check out?
The samples. I would go through the samples. Those are all pretty good.
Right. Okay, so let's see. Do you have like any optimization tips for them? Like what happens if they import like high poly models and then it starts lagging and things like that?
So like our biggest limitation is just the Quest 3. So I would try to avoid high poly models for both your design but also for your implementation because if it's going to lag in shapes, it'll definitely lag on the real device. And then there's like a performance mode which turns down the render scale. So if you are like having like a complex scene and you're getting some slowdown, that might be able to help, especially for textures. But it'll lower the
Okay,
quality of what you see a little bit.
right.
Yeah, we love getting feedback. We have a feedback channel in our Discord.
Yeah, so we'll put it up there. And the last question for today.
Sorry, better. It's an interesting question. I think I think this is really a question of ergonomics, right? So like you want to make sure things are comfortable distances, they're easy to read. I don't have to like move my head around too much. If you attach stuff to the body, make sure it's like in a comfortable position. Um, but yeah, I think really focusing on ergonomics and making sure that things are placed at like nice heights, nice distances.
All right. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's it, Michael. That's done with the questions. Thank you so much for joining. So, people in the chat, we have a small feedback form for you. If you can take 2 minutes to fill it, it would be really great. And you'll find the recordings again on the Discord. We have linked it. You can check it out there. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
All right, chat. Have a nice day too. Bye bye.